Today, the state of Idaho plans to execute a man who has been on death row for almost 50 years, Thomas Creech. And we have live team coverage this morning. Our Justin Core and Hector Mendoza live outside the prison there this morning in South Ada County with the latest on this scheduled execution. And he's scheduled to be executed at 10 a.m. unless the Supreme Court steps in. So let's get right to Justin and Hector at the prison and tell us about Creech's victims and who's going to witness today's execution, Justin. Also, we know protesters are expected out there this morning. So are you seeing anyone yet?
Maggie, great question. Yeah, let's step out of the way just real quick and we'll get to more with Hector in a second. As you can see behind us, there's the prison right back there, and then immediately behind us is an area where they're going to have people parking. They'll have protesters are expected right there later. No one has shown up yet. We have seen a lot of cars though headed through that gate as staff and crew start to arrive to the prison. They have very somber task here today, as again, Thomas Creech set to be executed at 10 a.m. So in just a little under 4 hours right now. Creech has been convicted in the murders of 5 people, although he said he killed at least 42 people in his lifetime. That claim has not been confirmed. Here's what we do know, though, about the lives he did end and the deaths he has been convicted of.
In June 1974, the body of 50-year-old Vivian Robinson, a state tax auditor, was found in their home in Sacramento, California. Investigators say the body was found so badly decomposed, no cause of death was originally announced. In October of 1975, investigators were able to link Creech's fingertips to the crime. Years later, it was revealed Robinson was suffocated. 2 months later, 22-year-old William Dean was found shot to death inside a church in Portland, Oregon. It's the same church where Creech once worked as a sexton. Creech later admitted to the killing. In early November, the bodies of 2 men were found in a ditch near Donnelly, Idaho. 34-year-old Edward Arnold of Texas and 40-year-old John Bradley of Alabama had been shot to death. Creech and his then-girlfriend, 17-year-old Carol Spalding from Lewiston, were later arrested and charged with murder. Creech reportedly told officers he, quote, shot the men after they made improper advances to Miss Spalding. Spalding eventually pleaded guilty to accessory to murder. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison. While behind bars, she gave birth to a baby boy, Ben. In 1981, while serving his life sentence for the deaths of the 2 men in Valley County, Creech beat a fellow inmate, 23-year-old David Dale Jensen, to death with a sock full of batteries. The 2 were exercising in the maximum security institution in Kuna when the warden said Jensen, quote, was slugged on the head by a homemade weapon consisting of flashlight batteries wrapped in a stocking. He was taken to a hospital where he later died. He was there serving a 3-year term for grand theft.
This morning's execution will be witnessed by a number of people. That includes Creech's family, his representatives, also state witnesses against him, and media witnesses as well, journalists. That includes Associated Press reporter Rebecca Boone. This will be actually the 3rd time that Boone has witnessed an execution as a media witness. She tells me this will be a very controlled process here this morning. The media witnesses will hand over their phones as no recording is allowed in there. They're going to be taken to the viewing room alongside the state's witnesses. They'll have a window directly into the execution chamber. Creech's family will be in a separate room. Creech will be wheeled in on a gurney. Staff will then put the IV in. The staff will check for last-minute stays of execution or any court orders. If there are none, Creech will be given an opportunity to say his final words. His spiritual advisor might offer a prayer, but then the chemicals will be administered. Once it's over, the coroner will be brought in to confirm the death. Witnesses will then be escorted out. The media witnesses will then go to the media tent to share what they saw with other reporters covering the execution. And you might be wondering, why? Why do we have media witnesses when they were not personally affected by these horrific crimes like the families of the victims? Why are they important? Well, here's what Boone told me.
Well, at the most basic level, we as media, as journalists, we observe executions for the same reason that we cover the legislature, that we cover battles or wars, even that we cover sports. And that's because we serve as the eyes and the ears of the public, so that they understand what's going on, how the state is carrying out their policies, and so that they can hold people in power accountable if the need arises.
As I said, this is Boone's third time being a media witness for an execution. I asked how that's affected her, not just reporting on, but actually seeing someone die, someone executed. She says while those images will stay with her forever, she keeps her purpose front of mind.
For me, keeping that goal at the forefront, like letting people know about this very important, very serious policy that we have in the U.S. and whether it goes well or not, is my calling. That's part of my job, and I love my job. And so that, for me, makes it a little easier. It's not easy, but it's certainly easier for me than it is for the people who have built relationships with the condemned over the years. For their family members, it's certainly easier for me than it is for the people who have lost their loved ones to violence and had this handed down in the sentence against the perpetrator. And it's certainly easier for me than it is for the state employees who are tasked with carrying out this execution. And so that too gives me some real perspective on the matter.
And our own Brenda Rodriguez will be a media witness this morning at Thomas Creech's execution, still scheduled right now for 10 a.m. We're going to get her thoughts later this morning. For now, let's talk to Hector Mendoza. Hector, you also have some more in-depth reporting coming up on today's execution.
Right, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth and just kind of what the process has been like for Idaho in terms of the death penalty and the history of it. And then if there are any protesters like we are expecting to show up later on this morning, we'll hopefully get a chance to talk with them and just kind of get what their thought process is and just kind of why they're opposed to the death penalty and specifically this execution happening today.
Yeah. Hector, thank you. We'll also hear from a reporter who's been following the cases against Creech since the 70s. That's coming up later. But for now, back to you, Maggie.
Thank you, Justin and Hector. And yes, our Brenda Rodriguez will be witnessing that execution today. She was chosen to be a media representative. Thomas Creech will be put to death at 10 a.m. unless the U.S. Supreme Court steps in. There is a slim chance of that, and we are watching and waiting to see if that happens. Preparations have been underway all week for this execution. A spokesperson for the Idaho Department of Correction tells us Governor Little, he won't be there. A member of his staff will be instead, along with Attorney General Raul Labrador. Creech will have two witnesses, his wife and his stepson. Bishop Brian Tom will also be with Creech as a spiritual advisor through this process. IDOC says there will be no members of David Dale Jensen's family present for the execution. Creech was sentenced to death for killing Jensen while in prison. He was also convicted of murdering 4 other people, but as we've mentioned, he has said he's killed over 40 people in the past. And finally, IDOC says his last meal at around 7 o'clock last night was chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, and ice cream. We're going to have live coverage coming up this morning and throughout the day here on 7. As we mentioned, Brenda Rodriguez, she is going to be a media witness at this execution and participate in a news conference with 3 other local journalists who were also chosen. She'll also join us live this morning to share with us about that experience and what she expects. We're going to bring you live coverage of that news conference as soon as it happens, both on air and online at ktvb.com.